And now we're hearing, I guess Obama is going to even use Predator drones to watch the border, Mexico-U.S. border. That's pretty amazing that we're going to like sort of increase the militarization of our borders.
Yeah, to all those right-wingers or even some libertarians and some well-intentioned people that are griping about the border so much, I say there you have it. If you keep griping about the border and you keep concerning yourself so much with keeping the illegals out, which there could be certain economic reasons, we're not really going to get into that, but I say to anyone griping that much about the border or emphasizing that so much in their arguments, I say, fine, you know what, keep griping about that. We're going to have a fence that can keep people in as well as keep people out, and we're going to give the government justification to monitoring the border with drones. Is that really what you people want? I mean, because that really, when you raise that issue, the government's going to solve these issues that whenever you really act contrary to love and understanding to other people, the government's going to use that as an excuse to gain more power. And not that I'm against the government having power in all situations, but we're seeing increasing instances where this power is being in, you know, it's not in agreement with what the American people are going to want 10, 20 years down the line. Mm-hmm. So I see all these issues as kind of interconnected, and these drones really upset me because what I did on that spy plane, I know that when we have drones doing that in place of humans doing that, and you get out the intermediary of the human heart, then it's going to be horrible. They're just going to have hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of communications from one individual drone, or maybe when they link them up to the cell towers, there's no telling. So it's time to stop all this. Plain and simple.
For sure. I thought there was another thing I just bumped into. It was pretty interesting. There's this thing called the Afghanistan Study Group. I guess they had the Iraq Study Group before, and you know, it's composed of former political officials, academics, and other people like that, supposed experts. And I mean, some of these people are pretty respectable. And they are actually coming out and calling for a serious change in Afghanistan strategy. I mean, they're saying that nation building is costing too much in blood and treasure, and the prospects for success are dim. And you know, they quote the 100 billion. We're spending 100 billion years in direct cost in Afghanistan. There's many billions more in indirect costs that aren't calculated. But so I mean, it seems like there's pressure growing on the administration. I really think that sort of what you guys are doing is going to help add to that pressure. And,
you know, it's wild. Like we do have empirical evidence that people in the South, at least on the trail that we blazed, do not support this war. Mm-hmm. We rarely ran into people that were like, all right, I can't wait to get my kids to go over there and take care of this business. You know, most of the people actually knew someone who had been killed or maimed over there, or who was there at that point in time and was not happy with it, which ultimately led us to some bleak conclusions as we got back to Arkansas. Because you know, if the South doesn't support this war in this country, then who does? Mm-hmm. And if the South doesn't support this war, then our government is possibly doing something against the will of its own people.
Oh yeah. Well, it seems like they're doing several things against the will of the people. I mean, the whole banking situation, bailouts, all that, it seems like a vast swath of people on both sides of the political spectrum don't support what they're doing there. I think it goes to this issue of sort of who's in control. It's all about power. It's like, who has the power? I mean, right now, 90% of the time, the candidate with more money wins in our elections. So, I mean, and then a lot of that money is coming from big multinational corporations. I mean, the number one donor is Wall Street, to both McCain and Obama. I mean, and that's would suggest that's a large part of the reason they gave these huge bailouts. And it's the same with the war, I think. I mean, you're having some of these big top owners of these corporations have heavy investment in the war. I mean, banks are one of the primary beneficiaries from wars, and I mean, they would lose a lot of stock value if they ended the war. I mean, so it's really, I think our elections have kind of been captured in a way, and it's kind of why I always like to get back to corporate personhood. Or what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that Jacob brought up a really interesting point, because I was in the trenches opposing the war before it started, mm-hmm. and when I would go out in the streets and we had anti-war marches in Fort Worth, there were people out there that were trying to start fistfights with us. There were militant people supporting this war. You can't say that. There's been a huge sea change, of course. Right. But that's why we need to change our strategy in order, because we know the war will become unpopular the longer it wages on, the more it costs. Mm-hmm. All these things will indicate a decreased aptitude for wanting to continue to support war. However, it doesn't change the culture that makes supporting a war possible at the very beginning of the war, because once you start a war, it's much harder to end it than not having a war to begin with.
Right. Right. Well, it seems like the people, I really kind of tend to feel that essentially almost everyone is basically good and basically wise. It's just a lot of people are taken advantage of by political and religious leaders and kind of manipulated. And I mean, certainly that you could see the Bush administration. I opposed the war from the beginning too, and I just watched the Bush administration. I knew they were lying to the American people and sort of, you know, manipulating their emotions and kind of, you know, he was making everyone scared of terrorism, be fearful, you know, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, and just sort of whipped people into this fear frenzy to where their rational capacity for thinking and questioning what their leaders were telling them was kind of deadened in a way.
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean, it was clear at that time, like, there was a consensus across the political gap. There were very few Democrats, very few Republicans that were opposing the wars.
In the beginning.
Yeah,
until a bunch of people started dying.
I mean, like, less than 10, less than how many I can count on my hands.
Right.
In Washington, D.C.
The Afghanistan war, you mean? Or? Yeah, yeah.
So
the Iraq war is kind of maybe a little different. I think more sort of the
more
opposition started growing on that one. Yeah.
But even at that point, I mean, who was standing up opposing the Afghanistan war?
Right. Not nearly.
While the Iraq
hardly
war was
anybody.
being ramped up.
Yeah.
So that dichotomy still existed. That the politicians were still very much back and behind the Afghan.
Well, it was seen as somewhat more of a just war, even, you know, obviously.
The apathy.
Yeah, the thing is, like you illustrated earlier, we're reaching the point of fatigue. We basically have battle fatigue in our own population. People are tired of it.
Yeah.
And they're ready for this thing to be over, but no one knows how to win. This is the problem.
How do you even talk about it?
Yeah.
I'm encountering people that yeah, they want the war to end, but they really don't even know how to articulate their feelings because their feelings have been buried by just nonsense that they're picking up from the media and that they're picking up just from Halo and just from everyday life. And people are just, Bill over at Whole Earth Organic Lounge said it pretty well. He said people are surviving. You know, people are surviving, and I don't mean that surviving like just trying to go out and hunt for food or whatever. I mean they're surviving in that they're maintaining their sanity in a way that's difficult to do, increasingly difficult to do when we have a government murdering people.
Yeah.
You have to, the apathy is sort of a defense mechanism, and we have to break through that.
It's wild. This is kind of a phenomenon that isn't discussed very much, but there is a duality to counterinsurgency. When you are using the money of a people's to wage a war on another country, you have to wage a counterinsurgency operation of information, pretty much, on your own population to talk them into supporting this thing. So we basically suffer from our own tactics as a people as this continues to happen, which helps create that narrative of war that crafts an apathy in this country toward the situation.
I certainly see, like, I mean, I personally feel, and I know a lot of people do, there's just sort of this collective psychological trauma that wars sort of cause, and it hurts us. But I think a lot of people, I don't know, they appear to be apathetic, but like a lot of people don't know what to do, and they're sort of, they don't see the doors of opportunity, or they don't feel empowered, I think. And I think it's kind of interesting if you look at countries in Europe, they're a lot smaller and the population's kind of more condensed, and there's more interconnection of people. It seems like they're able to sort of really organize against things like war more efficiently than we are in America, because we're all spread out. I mean, it's harder to coordinate or something. I don't know. And I don't know. A lot of people too, I think, are fearful about things in terms of their job and stuff. I mean, if they're to get up and speak out, will they lose their job or things
war,
like that?
Speaking out against the war a lot of times is contrary to securing your socioeconomic position, and you know. And Jacob was talking about that with how his mother didn't support the ride, but the ride until the end, because she, you know, as a realtor, as a successful realtor within her community, speaking out against war or having a family member that does could compromise, you know, the amount of houses she could sell in a month or a week or whatever.
It's true, like, and just like you were saying, it goes far beyond the individual speaking out, like, because my mom isn't even speaking out about it. I'm speaking out, and now that's affecting her life, you know. So there's all kinds of effects that spin out.
Indirect,
from,